Not everybody has the bandwidth to go to a meeting or do something or whatever, but let's think about it in different buckets, if you will. And I often say, time, talent, treasure.
Yes.
Maybe their effort is treasure. Maybe they can donate 5, $10 to another cause or a charity or somebody doing something good. Maybe that's your mechanism for facilitating more good in the world.
Welcome to the show, Todd. Let's get right to it. What do you do and how did you get started?
Well, currently, I joke I'm a chief troublemaker, to be honest with you.
I can
But
see
in
that. We've been
reality,
talking offline. I can see this.
no, in reality, I'm a family physician who stepped away from patient care at the end of last year, and then this year has really been about getting the book published, Ripple of Change, and then more importantly, networking and advocacy for our healthcare system, and really hoping or I joke, I wanna boil the ocean, which I realize it's gonna take many of us to do that, but, yeah, that's what I'm doing currently, mainly advocacy work.
But, boiling the ocean is it's we have to have people in the world that want to boil the ocean per se, right? And so if we didn't have people like that, then we would be playing small. We wouldn't, have Elon Musk's and, I mean, like we wouldn't have the things that we have available to us because we have to have people that are thinking so outlandishly big. So I really value that. You just said a whole lot of things all at once. So we're gonna just start picking and pulling these things apart. Um, Family physician. Are you still a family physician? Tell us about your experience as a family physician.
For sure. Well, yes, once a family physician, I suppose always a family physician, right? But I'm still board certified. I practiced for a little over 20 years, but I'm not actually seeing patients currently. That might change going into next year with what's called DPC, which is direct primary care. But as it stands, I'm not actually seeing patients and getting compensated for it. Now, having said that, do I get random phone calls from family and friends who have particular issues that need help? And have I helped them and called in some scripts? Yes, I've done that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, not currently seeing patients
I might be sending you some texts here and there,
though.
Hey, my son's got this weird thing under his, on his chin. What here's a pic.
As long as it's before, like, 9 p.m., I probably would answer. After that, there's a good chance it'll go into the next day.
Oh, I love it. So you practiced medicine for 20 years and now you've released a book, which we're going to get into in just a moment. But you mentioned that you're not really seeing patients per for pay and everything right now. What was a change in that? So why did you go from I'm practicing and I have my medicine and I have my practice, my family practice, to I'm not seeing patients for this period of time? It's like a sabbatical. Is it a sabbatical or is it early retirement? What?
Probably more of the latter, to be honest with you. So I actually did have a sabbatical for 3 months back in 2019, and it was a result of getting burned out. I was gonna quit. I was literally gonna
Mhm.
walk away from my job. I was so frustrated. With the way things were going. And I had some pay withheld because I had two open charts, which is completely ridiculous. That in and of itself is a story. But fortunately, my CEO gave me some time off. I came back and then I was in a wonderful office with three nurse practitioners, and we lived what I call the quadruple aim, which is patient experience, quality care, lower costs, and provider wellness. And this was despite some limitations that we had in the office, and the reality was I had done actually quite well with some other adventures and was in a position to cut back and go part-time, and I was very transparent as this was going on with my administration. I don't think they believed me, and they kept making really stupid decisions, to be honest with you, and then one day they came over and said, "Hey, we're gonna move you back to the town where you got burned out," and I was like, "What?" Like, what?"
Why would you do that?
And I'm like, "When yeah, when is this gonna happen?" "Oh, about 3 months from now." So, literally, the next morning, I resigned, and I stayed on for 5 months because I didn't want to abandon my patients, and I wanted to help them transition, which I did, and so that occurred in August of 2022. So at the end of last year, I stepped away from patient care. It really, as a result, I drew a line in the sand, and I'm like, "You guys, you stepped over the line, and I'm not a chess piece, and there's way too much crap going on in healthcare, and I'm gonna stand up for myself, my colleagues, and others." The interesting part of that was it really just the book kind of wrote itself at that point, because there was all these things that occurred as a result of that decision. And so in 2023, the first half of the year, I focused on editing and writing, and then in May we published, and then since then it's just been amazing and magical. Some of the opportunities that I've had as a result of the book. So yeah, here we are.
You know, okay, again, there's so much to everything that you just said. It's interesting to think about how many experiences that we have to have in order to have the content to express what is already in our heart and it's already in our belief system, but it gives more context, it gives more. So I'm sorry you've had to go through all that, but I'm also not sorry. I'm grateful that you leveraged that in using that as part of the steam behind writing the book Ripple of Change and advocating. And so I'm curious if you can share, just an antidote of one of those experiences where you're like, "You have gotta be kidding me," and it's in the book, like, how? I can't even make this stuff up.
Oh, yeah, I'll give you a good one. So we had a meeting, probably 2 years that preceded that moment where I walked away, and or maybe it was a year before, a year before, I guess, and we were going over how well the office was going because the quote unquote system wanted to emulate it. And so we talked about it, and the conversation went very well, and, we were doing this, and we were doing that, and these other things anyways. So me being me, I wasn't satisfied with just that. I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna take this to another level." And I started expressing concerns on a systemic basis of wellness, retention, recruitment, particularly for physicians, but also for the other, care providers. And the 3 administrators sitting in front of me was like the deer in the headlight look that you kinda get when, like, "We're here, but we're not really listening to you anymore." And this was after I had already told them that I could retire whenever I wanted to. And so I'm seeing this and I'm going, "Well, this is ridiculous." So I had anticipated this, and I brought a stack of value-based reimbursement forms with me. And I was an ACO medical director for 6 years, which is Accountable Care Organization. So I knew exactly what these forums were for. They increase your reimbursement, for seeing patients and providing good care. So I held them up to the 3 administrators and I said, "Do you know what I do with these if I've had a bad day?" Kinda they shook their heads a little bit. I go, "I put them in the shredder." And I thought the president of the physician group was gonna jump out of his chair. He was so pissed. And then he proceeds to threaten me with my paycheck, and I'm like, "You weren't even listening when I said I could retire. Like, how is you threatening me with my paycheck doing anything? Like, you're just making this worse." There was such an opportunity in that moment, um, to work on so many things at so many levels, but the focus was on money, and it just
Mhm.
at that point, I was like, "I don't have the energy to fix this mess that I'm existing in. I'm gonna focus on my office, and we're gonna make it magical." And we did. And, for another year, year and a half, it was amazing.
Oh my goodness. Um, my mind is just pinging around because there's just so much there. And I think about just being willing to take a stand. And every great thing that has happened in the world is by people willing a single person. Usually it starts with a single person willing to take a stand. So I think it was back in Greece and the Spartans, and I get some of my history mixed up. So conscious investor, just take this as a generalization, I suppose, because I'm going to get all my people mixed up. But I mean, there they are, the Spartans, and they're being attacked, and this other kingdom's trying to overtake them. And this group of Spartans literally stood, and they knew that it meant their lives. They knew that they're going to go down, but they fought for an entire week, and that was enough. And there were casualties. Most of them didn't. I don't think any of them made it. But that was enough to make the other kingdom literally turn away. But it started with the leader, the king, saying, I'm going to lead this, and not on my watch. And the power of one person being willing to say, I believe in this through and through my core, and I'm going to be the gatekeeper. We're moving forward. And that's what ignites a movement that is so much. That's how we can boil the ocean, is simply by saying, this isn't just about me. It's not the Todd show, or for me, it's not the Julie show. It's, let's advocate. Hey, world, wake up. Can you hear this? Can you hear this, please?
100%. You know, it oh, wow. We get into the why of, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I talk about, there's really three parts to it. And, my burnout was part of it. But there's two other big components to it. I've had the unfortunate experience to have lost three of my colleagues to suicide, including one of my partners.
Oh my gosh.
And, and yeah, I think back on some of this stuff and I tear up just talking about it. But the other frustration, like at the tail end of my time seeing patients, it daily, the frustrations, whether it was access or costs or pharmacy problems, you name it. I mean, and I would have to say, look, I'm trying to help you with your diabetes and your hypertension and whatever else. I can't fix these systemic changes right now. Um, and I look back on a lot of that, and I talked Joshua, my co-author, and we would talk about it a lot. We felt like we were being guided through the process. And, you made the comment like everything happens for a reason and all these things kind of line up and the butterfly effects or what have you. And you know what? This is kind of what I'm meant to be doing now. I feel like I am not afraid. I'm not gonna shut up. Um, and that's what we need. We need physicians who don't have that fear to advocate not only for the other physicians, but patients and frankly everybody, because we are in like a $4 trillion mess in this country that
Mm-hmm.
needs significant overhaul to get back what it should be. So yeah, but here I am wearing my Metallica t-shirt under my my little thing here.
Well, you should be
Uh,
you
do,
should be sporting the Metallica t-shirt. That's what.
I debated it and I was like, well, I don't want to be, uh, I don't know. I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but yeah, it's there. It's
You're
hiding
already
under there.
casting a ripple. I mean, like, what more can you do? It's like, it's people where you've already done the hard work. You've already, press pause on a career to do things. I'm like, wearing a Metallica t-shirt is really, small fries right there. But
Yeah, it's, well, you know what? Actually, I'll double click on that for a second. It was, I knew the day when the decision was made where I was going to resign. I had gone home and I told my wife, Angie, I said, I told her, I said, this is what happened today. And she just started crying. And I vowed I was never going to get burned out again. And I said, that's it. I said, this is a sign. I have got to do something. And I thought about it. I prayed about it. I went for a walk and I called her the next morning and I was driving and it was like, sweetheart, I'm going to resign. She said, go ahead. Sorry.
I please don't apologize. It's so powerful.
It's gosh, every time I talk about it, I get choked up. It's unbelievable. Like, and it's because I guess it's real. It's like, and all these emotions and memories come flooding back of, just the amazing things that I get to do and the amazing things that I'm getting to do now. Um, I always said I wear my heart on my sleeve, and clearly that's, or maybe I wear it on my Metallica t-shirt, I guess.
They have really thoughtful
uh,
lyrics. I'm just gonna say their lyrics are really, really thoughtful. That's well
have
written.
have you seen them? Have you ever seen them live?
No.
Oh, it's even if you're just kind of the casual fan, they are incredible. Just incredible. Good shows. And they're all like 60 something now and still just rocking it out there. It's amazing.
So that's because they live in their personal freedom. And really that's what you have done. Conscious investor, I hope you're not losing sight of this. Think about all the choices that Todd made that led to financial freedom, that have provided this personal freedom that he is living in, that is providing this substantial contribution in the medical industry at a pivotal time. Like all of your past choices, and you don't become, you don't position yourself where, oh, I can retire and you can sit comfortably in a boardroom and say, uh, okay, like that's not a threat to me. You don't just magically end up there. You think about, and I don't know if you've considered this, but the lifetime of choices that you and your lovely wife Angie have made over the years, all of those deposits of great choices that positioned you so that you could be in that position to say, um, screw it. I'm out and I'm going to do something totally different and I can.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think back to even before medical school and joining the Navy, which was kind of probably the first major step to that capacity for financial freedom. And then going from there and some of the passive investments that have been over the years, is there a calculated risk when you just walk away like that? Well, yeah, for sure. And have I had to dip into some things to a certain extent? Of course. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. But I think this has created so many other opportunities that are now starting to pay off. And the beauty of the whole thing is it just fills me up to advocate for others. I always loved seeing patients, and there's a euphoria that is hard to truly describe unless you've had the opportunity to do it. But this is a different joy now that I'm enjoying probably just as much, quite frankly.
You need there's man, Todd, we need like 5 episodes worth. I mean, like we could go so, so much deeper. But I would be remiss if I did not ask, what has given you the inner resilience and bandwidth to pivot from I'm in the Navy, I practice family medicine, to I don't like the way this is going. I am super burned out and that's not healthy in my life, to you know what? I'm taking a stand against this. Peace out, y'all. I'm writing a book and let's go. Game on. Like what was it? What is so not many people are capable of doing that. So what would you say, this is where it comes from?
Wow. There's multiple components to that, I would say. You know, Good upbringing, I would say is part of it. My parents did a wonderful job. They weren't perfect, but for the most part, how they took care of myself and my siblings was part of it. My current family is very supportive, as you probably could tell, from Angie telling me to just tell my boss to take the job and shove it.
Yes.
Faith there's got to be a component of faith to this. Like you've got to believe that the future is going to be okay when you make some major decisions like that. And I always think back to my college days. I wrote an essay, and I get maybe this was the first inkling of writing or one of the first episodes of writing. I got asked to write an essay. They took one student from each college where I went to and said, "Why did you pick a Catholic education?" And I started my essay with a fortune cookie that I had gotten that said, "Your principles mean more to you than any money or success."
Mm.
And I still actually have the fortune cookie. Um, and so I think it was a combination of those things that gave me the intestinal fortitude um, to take. Yeah, I mean, I took a stand. The interesting part of it is my colleagues. They thought I was crazy a little bit for sure, but I think they all love me for speaking up. And interestingly enough, like the institution where I was at, the C-suite that was leading at the time, well, they're mostly gone, I suppose, and, here we are talking about it. I and I don't relish that fact necessarily, you don't wanna be happy for others' misfortunes or what have you, but I think it speaks to the cultural issues that were going on at the time, and if you weren't following the line that was being dictated from on high, you were ostracized a little bit, and that's unfortunate. That's not the way it should be, especially when you're trying to advocate for positive stuff. Like,
Mhm.
holy smokes.
It's
Anyways.
it's amazing how blinded and misguided people can become. I've told my kids we listen to Story of the World, which is one of my favorite things. Conscious Investor, pick up pick it up, the audio Story of the World. Don't get the book, just listen to the audio because it's a massive survey of world history from the beginning of time to, I don't know, roughly Twin Towers, right? But I always I've always told the kids, and they'll probably, if someone were to ask, they'd probably say, yeah, power, when people are in power, I mean, like, people want power, it makes them greedy. Oftentimes, like, it brings out power, money, fame, whatever it is, it can amplify what's already within you. And so when people rise into positions where of prominence, the C-suiters and such, right? For example, then, and conscious investor, I'm going to dovetail and say, this is why when we have financial freedom, financial independence, we must also have personal freedom so we don't find ourselves being a total jerk in the world. And I'm putting it in a very mild way. And so when we look at people of position and power, we see, well, they didn't just become like that. That was already within them. It's just amplified now. And so it's sad.
Yeah, but I think, there on the converse of that though too, I think
Yeah.
there are many who have the money or the power or whatever who are of the opposite, on the opposite end of the bell curve or whatever. And that's been one of the amazing things that I found in the last 6 months is how many other physicians and change agents are out there that want to
Yes.
facilitate getting things back where they should be. And one of the groups that I'm with is called Medicine Forward. The one of the co-founders, Gabe Charbonneau, and I have become really, really good friends at this point. And we're getting all these physicians and other leaders that are like, yeah, I want a part of this. I want to, when you guys get
Mhm.
really noisy, I want to be part of that tribe or swarm or whatever word you want to use. And it's exciting, and so that positive energy of those folks is next couple of years are going to be really cool, I think. There's some
I
cool
agree.
things
It's gonna
cooking.
Yeah, it is definitely gonna be cool. And like you said, on the other side of things, if you are already somebody who's grounded in principle and value that are, looking for contribution that will serve and support people, that gets amplified. So like you, I'm blessed to be surrounded by so many wonderful people who are in positions of power and influence, but they use it for good. It's like, yes, we can go either way with that.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and one of the things I talk about, there's always this conversation of how do we get physicians engaged and how do we get more help and all these other things, and I've been saying a lot like, not everybody has the bandwidth to go to a meeting or do something or whatever, but let's think about it in different buckets, if you will, and I often say, time, talent, treasure.
Yes.
Maybe their effort is treasure. Maybe they can donate 5, $10 to another cause or a charity or somebody doing something good. Maybe that's your mechanism for facilitating more good in the world. Um, yeah, so it doesn't always have to be, attending meetings because not everybody wants to attend more meetings necessarily. Um, so yeah, it's been a blessing. Just, some other groups that I've had the opportunity. I don't know if you've ever heard of Remote Area Medical. I talk about them quite a bit. It's a fascinating group. They originated with an actor. His name was Stan Brock. And there was a documentary that came out recently called Medicine Man. And later on in his life, he created this group that essentially takes tractor trailer trucks full of medical equipment and volunteers to rural areas in the United States and delivers free healthcare. Free. there's
Amazing.
2 ways to look at this, like, why are we having this going on in this country of abundance, number 1, which is
Right.
concerning, I would say, but on the other side of it, it's like, look at these amazing things that they're doing, like, for people who are truly in need, it's just an incredible story.
I absolutely love that. I want to go backwards a little bit because at the very beginning, it's like there were like 5 to 10 different things that I really wanted to pick apart, and that's like I was trying to triage it, right? But I want to go back to the book Ripple of Change, um, and I want to talk about how your burnout led to that, and partnering and collaborating with a patient. This is unprecedented. I think I'm safe to say there isn't a book out in the world like this where there's been that type of alliance in creating a forward moving piece of content. So, can you tell us about it? Tell the conscious
Yeah,
investor about, how that came about, how that relationship, really came about, and what you want to accomplish with Ripple of Change.
for sure. So, Joshua, my co-author, had been a patient of mine for about a decade when I really started writing. And the first piece I wrote was called Medicine is a World of Gray, which is a poem that I had written probably 2 years, post burnout. And it's somewhat dark, kind of really shining the light on what really goes on in medicine and healthcare. And from there, I wrote the chapter called Anatomy of Burnout. And part of the reason why I did that was the catharsis for me to heal from some of the wounds that I had. And at the same time, Joshua was really struggling with his health from cervical radiculopathy, which essentially pinched nerve in the neck, causing pain down his arm. And we
Mm.
had tried all kinds of stuff to help with it, traction and different analgesics and physical therapy and imaging studies and referrals and you name it. No HIPAA violations here. It's all in the book. So just throwing that out there. Um, so the reality was, I have post concussive headaches from my days playing soccer, and I take a medication called duloxetine, which has indications for arthritic pain, and a lot of providers use it for neuropathic pain. And it was the first thing that provided a headache-free day for me in about 2 years. It took about 2 years of not have a headache. Anyway, so I offered it to Joshua, and he had devastating side effects from it, just horrendous.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
you can't even make this stuff up as you go through the book, like how bad it was for him. Like, you got me doing great on this medicine and him doing horrendous on the medicine, and I was running out of ideas for him to really get him to a better place. And so this was all occurring about the time I had started writing, and so I told him about the project, and because Josh is a very bright guy, very articulate, and I said, "Are you interested?" And he goes, "Well, sure. I don't know what the quadruple aim is, but I like you, and you're trying to help me, so sure." He's like, "Well, what do you want me to write about?" And I said, "Just write." That's literally the only instructions I gave him. And so that's how this little pill capsule came on the spine of the book. I don't know if you can see it,
Oh, yeah.
in the form of the yin and the yang. Um, so in the book, we really go back and forth from the physician's perspective to the patient's perspective, taking a broad look at the current infrastructure in healthcare at many levels. And really, the book is loaded with ideas for improvement, whether it's self-improvement, improved interaction with your physician, or, going way above that, systemic improvement. We could get into legislative improvement. We touch on that a little bit. And so my goodness, the book was this amazing evolution of me trying to fix like patient administrator relationships to quote unquote trying to boil the ocean, if you will. And so that led to the adjustment with the title. I was very adamant that we've got to have the quadruple aim in the title. And to Joshua and his wife Megan's credit, they were kinda dragging their feet on it because they knew it wasn't the right choice, and I give them all the credit in the world for sticking to their guns, and then eventually, between Joshua and I, one of us came up with Ripple of Change. I don't even remember who it was, and I'm like, "That's it. Like, if we can inspire and empower everyone to do something, this could get powerful. And that's where the title came from. So here we are.
And here we are. By the way, I love the front cover. It really melds well with Ripple of Change, which don't judge a book by its cover. I get that. But, just the way you took the medical symbol, which I always forget what it has an actual name to it.
Caduceus.
Caduceus. It flows with the whole concept of Ripple of Change, the way it's done. So um I love this, and I love the collaboration. Where do you go from here? What does the future look like? Are you winging it? Are you trusting the process? I love trusting the process, but I also have some ideas for, for where I'm going and things.
Yeah, 100%. So we were actually intentionally kind of slow with marketing at the beginning because we wanted to kind of mirror the ripple effect, to be perfectly honest with you.
Uh-huh.
So it was mainly friends and family and other colleagues. And then I think the first step that really we started to get more traction is when I really started getting active on LinkedIn and connecting with physicians all over the place. Once that started happening, it's kind of accelerated to the point where I'm talking on podcasts and with other colleagues and going to seminars and stuff and planning for a keynote and all these other things. So and there's even other things I don't want to divulge that I think are going to happen in 2024 that are even more exciting. Um, so yeah, where do I see myself going with this? Ultimately speaking, advocacy in terms of next steps, I think there's going to be some legislative things that are going to need to happen to really move the needle on that. Am I planning to like run for office somewhere? I, I don't think my wife would be able to tolerate that, so I don't think that's in the cards necessarily. But will I be? Do I think I'll be connected with people who in those positions making some significant changes for the betterment of the majority of stakeholders? I do, and ultimately, I think that's going to be an important part of this. A good example is some of the work with a group called Safe Haven in Virginia, who in the Lorna Breen Foundation, with that resulted from an ER doc who unfortunately took her own life, but that's resulted in this wonderful group that has improved access to um, uh, mental. Cat's got my tongue, but therapy and referrals and mental well being in a safe space that you don't feel like your license is being threatened, and that's so desperately
Hmm.
needed because the historical mantra for physicians is basically heal thyself, which is ridiculous. You know,
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and it's actually led to a lot of the problems. So you see, groups like this, just it warms my heart to see it that we're getting to the point where we're working on burnout and trying to reduce the suicide rates and all these other wonderful things.
Mm. It's so I can see that, and I'd love to just mirror this and see if this is correct. Is hey, these amazing physicians who I have yet to meet a physician who does not have a heart to serve, and they got into medicine because they wanted to help people. That's been my interactions with physicians. And yet, who do you go to when the pressures are all on you, to your point of, if I go to this person, now my license could get flagged, I could get flagged. So I really do have to be a lone ranger and champion and pioneer for myself. So is that, is that what's leading to so much burnout and struggles for physicians and suicides?
That's a big part of it for sure. There's a lot of fear on many levels, whether it's the financial, whether it's the licensure level, and part of it's the historical training, compartmentalize and just shove it in a box and all those kinds of things. Well, that's all well and good until it's not.
Yeah.
And when it's not, it's a mess. I can speak to it. I was not my best self for the better part of 6 months seeing patients. And that's unfortunate because that's really not the way it should be. But it was a big driver for a lot of us that are talking about it now and doing things like writing the book and putting it out there so that people understand what's really going on behind the scenes so that we can make some major systemic changes, because the current trajectory is scary with particularly with physicians, but also with other caregivers just leaving the field. It is like
Mhm.
a stampede of people. You can't have 47-year-old physicians not seeing patients, you
Mhm.
know, because there isn't gonna be anybody to see the patients if we keep
Right.
going at this rate, and that's a problem in and of itself. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's oh my gosh, we could talk about this for days.
Yeah.
But that probably wouldn't be too exciting.
It is so necessary. And in Conscious Investor, here are a few questions that I would love for you to invite in. And so while we've been talking about, the medical field and such, this applies to all of our life. Like we need to be keeping tabs. We need to evaluate what substance are we made of? When push comes to shove, what part of us is going to show up? And if we really do that, have that deeper look at ourselves, we might actually find like, wow, I want to grow in these particular areas because I could see, for example, we all know, we'll talk lightly and loosely. People know about hangry, right? It's a thing. We accept it. Like, oh, you're going to get hangry because you didn't eat. Blood sugar levels dropping. Better feed that person. Okay. So when we know that, we take precautions around that. But there are other parts of our life where we have to really keep our finger on the pulse and say, let me be deeply honest with myself. Is the best part of myself going to show what part of myself is going to show up in these situations? And is that the best part of myself? And is that how I want to show up? So ask yourself that question about where you are working, about your family life, about your friendships, about, areas you serve in your community. Like really evaluate, how am I showing up? I also want you to consider burnout. Burnout is real, especially when you're trying to do something above board and it's getting rejected. I remember an administrator telling me when I was in public ed, can you just tap it down? I've got teachers complaining about all the cool things that you do. That's a great way to get somebody to go, oh, I guess it's time for me to leave and to go into full time real estate investing. That worked. And so you want to look at, how are you navigating your burnout? What decisions are you making right now that are creating that financial freedom so that you can protect your personal freedom? Because our personal freedom, as much as conscious investor, financial freedom can bank like only pursuing that can bankrupt the rest of our life. So we want to be ensuring that as we're pursuing that financial freedom, we're really using that to protect our personal freedom and our greater contribution to the world. And I also want you to consider one third question: where can you be a change agent? That might be financially contributing. That might mean taking a stand. That might mean simply encouraging somebody. But these are three areas where, although we're talking about medicine, these are practical areas you can apply all of this into your everyday daily life. And you can encourage others with these questions as well. Todd, you might have something else to add.
I was listening. I was learning.
You're like,
There's a
let
lot
me write these
there's
notes down.
no, there's a lot of gold in there. I I will piggyback on that a little bit. In the book, we extrapolate our quadruple aim to several other industries. Ironically enough, one of the charts in the book compares it to education, teaching, and we make parallels with the four components to what it could look like in the educational sector. And I think I see parallels in your story and in my story. I'm saddened and I'm disappointed that you were doing wonderful things for the children, and that out of whether it was jealousy or whatever, you were told to tamp it down. Like, why couldn't we just extrapolate some of those things to the other classrooms? I mean, like, come on, this isn't that hard. Like,
It's
oh my goodness. But that stuff happens everywhere, and I look at the best places to be employed are the ones that pay attention to that human-centered design. They put people first over profits, and typically when
yes.
you do that, you know what? Amazingly enough, the profits tend to come flowing in anyways. It's just, oh, corporate America sometimes. Anyways.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that there is change taking place, and companies are changing. Some of the corporate structures are shifting, but that's because people are starting their own companies, and that's because people are standing up and advocating. It doesn't come from somebody sitting quietly doing their work and not saying something, because people don't know there's a problem unless people say there's a problem, and it usually takes multiple people bringing up a problem, but it always starts with one person. And so, conscious investor, where can you be that one person? And this doesn't even have to be all around conflict. This could be around positive things. This could be, are you that one person that is encouraging somebody? Are you that one person that notices the person sitting on the sidelines and welcomes that person in? Like, just look for the opportunity, because everywhere you go in life, I saw somebody at the coffee shop this morning, and she's walking by, hadn't seen her for a while. I literally, like, got out of my chair, walked out the door in a hurry just to give her a hug, and just walked with her to where she was going, just so we could catch up for a moment. Like, just, are you willing to take the time to make people very important in your life?
I love that. The power of positivity and is so underutilized at times, if you will. In the book, one of the sections we talk about is kindness and kudos. And I refer to this chapter quite a bit. It's called ROI for a Health System. And I offer 10 low cost or no cost challenges, I guess for the C suite predominantly, but for anybody really that they could take and make a difference in a positive way. And oh, if we just had more of that, more love in the world,
Mm,
it would just be amazing. It's interesting on LinkedIn, there's this group of physicians that are just so supportive and affirming and hearts and kindness. And even when we disagree on something, because you're not going to agree on everything, right?
yeah.
There's a logical conversation about it where, okay, yeah, we talked about it. And so what? Let's move on. We still both want to make positive change and we can disagree on this one little point and who cares? Let's keep going. In fact, that happened and it was around the word provider. And I won't get into the nitty gritty, but there's a certain subset of physicians that really dislike that word. And I understand why. And I understand where it comes from a historical perspective. But is that really where we want to be using our energy to argue about semantics and words? No. And I reached out to one of my colleagues about this and we talked about it. And I sent her a book and we've actually kind of become very good friends despite that, to the point where I was on her podcast a few weeks back and we had a wonderful time. And so it speaks to, yeah, you can have that conflict. Okay, but move on, move on. Focus on the positive. Focus on how we can work together, to make some difference.
So important that we focus on the things that are bringing us together in alliance for a greater outcome. Todd, we could clearly go on and on and on. I feel like we have to have 5 podcast episodes, but but I know you and I connected on LinkedIn. It's one of my favorite social platforms. Although, conscious investor, I am starting to go into Instagram, which is crazy. It's a big change. So go follow at the handle, the Conscious Investor Podcast. But if you're not already following on LinkedIn, that's my happy spot. That's where you and I connected. And how else can people, how can they find you on LinkedIn, and how can they find the book? And you have something lastly, you have something exciting with the book that's coming out, so let's kind of bundle that all together. Where can they find you, and how do they get the book?
Sure. So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I do a little bit on Facebook, a little bit on X, or formerly known as Twitter. Just search Todd R. Otten. There's not a ton of Todd R. Otten MDs out there, so pretty easy to find. And then our website is ourquadrupleaim.com. And that's, if you want an autograph book or a signed book, that's the best place to go. And we've got a great deal going on with the holidays and what have you. But the other really fun thing that's coming out is we're trying a little bit different approach with our audiobook. Starting in 2024, we're going to have 2 chapters sent out weekly to subscribers, so that once a week you'll get a couple chapters with Joshua and I reading the book. So yeah, look for that as well. And yeah, thanks for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure and a lot of fun.
Awesome. I appreciate your time, Todd, and I really want to just commend you and appreciate being a front runner, in putting drawing a line in the sand, and that changes your profession substantially and puts a target on your back in multiple ways. And it also advocates, serves, and supports far more people than you and I will ever know at this time. Because history, we can always look back on history, but we don't have that luxury right now. So when people look back, I have no doubt that they'll see, wow, this is one of the instruments, one of the change agents that made a huge impact at a really critical time in healthcare in America. So thank you.
Thank you. Very kind of you. Thank you.
Conscious investor, thank you so much for listening through. Please make sure you take time to reflect on those few questions that I asked earlier, right? So you want to be thinking about, push comes to shove, who's going to show up from you? And what are you doing with burnout? How are you supporting other people where you can recognize burnout? And where can you be a change agent in the world? Because we're not called to be sideline people. We're called to be on the field playing. That's why you're given a life. So use your life really well and use every single heartbeat with enthusiasm, and moving forward with just clarity and confidence to say, hey, my life's going to matter in a really powerful way. That means just smiling and shaking somebody's hand, or being a champion for a cause. It doesn't matter. It all matters. It does matter. All of those things matter. Whatever, like, boy, I just better stop talking now, huh? Conscious investor, I appreciate you, and I have full confidence that you understand exactly where I was going with that, because you've been listening to the show for a while. Until our next episode, choose health, mindset, and wealth.